Welcome to today's episode of Together, the podcast, a God TV production. I'm Ian Young, I'm the operations director here at God TV, and we have a very special podcast for you. I'm interviewing Reuben. Reuben, you join us today to talk about something exciting that happened in the period of time when we all couldn't go outside, that we shall not say in case the algorithms pick it up, when there was a disease that captured the world and captured us all and meant that we couldn't live our lives as normal, that God used in a mighty way.
Yeah.
But Reuben, before you know, there's clearly an age gap between us, and you've identified yourself in my paperwork anyways, Gen Z and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, I'm genuinely excited to have today's conversation because we've only just met just before this podcast, and I had the privilege of having lunch with you. And the thing that struck me was like how much energy you have and how much you evidently love Jesus, and just for me how countercultural that is, you know, meeting lots of young people and having young family and not hearing any of them talk like you did at lunch was just so encouraging and so powerful. So I can't wait to get into your story of what happened during the period where we cannot name, that begins with a C, and ends in 19. And but yeah, like tell us a bit about who you are, Reuben. Like, you know, like how did you meet Jesus, and you know, like what impact is he having in and through you?
Yeah, that's cool. I think as a Christian, you kind of got this like the 10-second testimony or the like half-hour testimony, depending on who wants to listen. But I became a Christian when I was 4. So I grew up in a Christian kind of home, actually at this festival called Creation Fest, which is really cool, and really part of the team there and helping with them.
Creation Fest was happening and you were 4?
Yeah, it was.
Man, I feel
near the beginning. And yeah, so I became a Christian when I was 4.
How old are you now?
I'm 20. 21 in August. And yeah, so I became a Christian when I was 4. My parents split when I was year 5, going to year 6, so maybe like 10, 11 years old. Yeah, both of them Christian. Dad very involved in church. Mum still has a faith, definitely. I got baptized when I was 16, but I said my faith really became real when I was 18. And you'll notice this crossover here, but from the age of 15 to kind of 17, 18, got caught up in party culture, drugs, alcohol, girls, everything the world is telling you to pursue because it seems good. And we mentioned it a little about lunch. It's just, as young people, you just kind of try to work it out. So we look at each other and we go, hey, these guys are doing this. This is quite public. So like, let's all just try it because it seems like it might be working. Only to realize that 3 or 4 years later, I'm still living with the consequences of those things. So yeah.
What do you mean by living with the consequences?
It's a good question. Well, I think, up until I'm 25, I'm really learning what it is to be a human. Really, as a male, I think, your cognitive stages for after 25 become different. You pick up stuff, you learn stuff, you build your character a lot in those years. School, or everything you're doing in that time. So when I was using substances and people for my pleasure, and now realizing the damages that actually those things were leading me on this conveyor belt. If you'd have spoken to my youth leaders all that time, who's running for Jesus? Like, who's on fire for Jesus? Who's going somewhere, doing something? They said, Reuben. Between church, basketball, and school, I had like one free night every other week, and I loved it. It was great. I'd go up late to a party and say, people would go, hey, Reuben, where have you been? I'd say, oh yeah, I was at church, you should come. And then we'd be drinking a 10 crate. Or just putting whatever substance. So I did any drug apart from crack and heroin, because even when you're in the drug scene, those ones are a bit too much. But we'd put random pills that we didn't know what was into our mouths. And it was a real big point. It was around January 2020. I think, because it's coming to 3 years now. January 2020, where I'd just taken LSD. And it was the day or two after, and I kind of just realized, I was like, wow, there's nothing that I haven't done. Apart from like that kind of stuff, there's nothing I haven't really done. And
it's funny that when people are taking drugs, that there's always a level, right? So you
there's
this imaginary line that I'm not that bad because
there's always someone worse.
Because I'm not taking X, Y, and Z.
Yeah,
that's insane.
It's crazy, isn't it? And Remember conversations the first time I'd smoked weed with friends that said, hey, give it 6 months, you'll do this, then you'll do this, then you'll do this. Remember conversations I'd had with friends saying very similar things. And we were just on this conveyor belt, and we all knew it and we all saw it. And we were able to predict it to like the month of what we'd do.
So you were living like a split life, really. You were living as a Christian, all out for God, probably totally evangelistic, but then not behaving like that one night every couple of weeks.
Well, it was like every weekend there was parties all the time and stuff like that. I just thought the two would go together. Yeah. Like I thought the two, that I was like, I could be a Christian, and I believed, like it was really obviously true to me, but I just hadn't quite committed.
So what's the logic there? Because I'm hoping to encourage people at home that feel like they can do that, of why they might do that, and also help people have empathy with, the next generation, who seem lost or out partying or whatever. Because honestly, because I met God when I was 30, not when I was 18 or 4, I've never had that dilemma. So I met God, and then it
changed.
All that stuff fell away from me because I'd met Christ. I never was like, oh, I've already met Christ and now I think I can do all this stuff as well. What's the sort of logic there? What, as a young man, what are the lines that you're drawing? Like, why are you going, oh, it's okay to love Jesus and, abuse my body, or, use other people's bodies for pleasure, or whatever it is that's going down,
I think it's, like I said, we're working out by ourselves. So it's the minute we realise it's bad, or we see someone else that's doing something and see the consequences. I think this is why discipline is effective and important, is when you see the consequence, and actually sometimes instant consequence is quite important. Because if I step out in a car and if I step out into the road and there's a car coming, I get hit, I'm not going to do that again. But if I step out into the road and only 6 months or a year later I feel the damage, I then regret what I did and don't see it in the now. And this is what I kind of realized when I was stuck in the middle of this kind of conveyor belt. Saw friends that were less experienced and was kind of guiding them in this, because we had no guides, so we just looked to each other. And we saw friends that had maybe drug dealers, massive dependencies, addictions and all the kind of things. THC, the vapes and stuff like that was the thing that affected my friends the most. It was just spice. It was just so high concentration stuff that just had so much damage 6 months later when they were just addicted. And I looked forward and just said, I don't want to be there. And if I don't get off now, I don't know if I ever will. So I did 6 months sober. 3 of those, there was no parties, as we kind of talked about before. 3 months there was, we weren't able to gather, we weren't able to do those kind of things. So it made it easier for me, it made it harder for some people. Because I had, again, my own personal rules is I'll do it when I'm with people.
Right.
So our groups went from on the Hoe in Plymouth, we always used to go to the beach, we used to go swimming, stuff like that. So we'd all go swimming and some people might pick up. And then we'd all pick up and then sometimes go swimming. And then we'd all sit on the grass and just smoke and never really thought about swimming anymore. And that was just that kind of, you can always make excuses. There was always something on, and whether there was something we could find, I've got this gift to connect people, to connect with people, to kind of, be around and gather people. So it was, hey, Reuben, when's the next party? What's going on? I was here. Oh, if not, okay, we'll just make our own. So you created excuses for that lifestyle because you wouldn't do it by yourself, because that makes you an addict and someone who can't control it.
Yeah.
And I justify it myself as well sometimes, because sometimes I'd just drink. And I didn't really like what alcohol did to me, so that's why I did drugs. And then sometimes I could go sober, and I never went out of my way to get the most high. It was just, what can I take that's small, that boosts? So it's like, hey, I'm using the drug, but then all of a sudden, like you say, 6 months later, a year later, you realize, oh, that cost me something.
Yeah. And there's this pervasive lie over you that, I'm not as bad as the next person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So 6 months sober, go on.
In line with your testimony, what you said, was it you were 18 when you sort of committed yourself to Jesus?
Yeah.
Where was that in this timeline of partying and doing drugs? And
so, like I said, I kind of always had this faith, had that gradual faith. Like I said, I got baptized when I was 16, so that was in that. And then it was almost after that party phase ramped up. It was just like more parties, it was more common. Friends that I didn't know too well, but the only thing we had in common was we like to escape using these things, so let's just do it together. Shallow conversations, did I know anything about their parents? Did I know about their family life? Did I know what was really going on in their lives? And I did an Instagram post about this, kind of just why I don't do drugs anymore. And kind of had these questions of like, hey, if I'd have been asked these questions earlier, I maybe wouldn't have made the same choices. And wanting that depth in my life rather than that surface level where parties stopped and our group disappeared, apart from the few that I'd really consistently journeyed with. But then, 6 months sober, when things started easing, I meet up with my friends again, I picked up again. So I relapsed for like two weeks basically. And it was under the justification of, hey, these are the only ones I haven't done. 2CB and another couple one, I think. And then I was like, okay, they're the only things that would draw me back in. So I'll do that and then I'm done, because I've already opened the door, so I might as well go all the way in and then shut it fully. But it's so much harder to shut it fully once you've opened it. So I said, okay, I've stopped, back to being sober. I'm not going to do anything more again. I had some friends around because I didn't want to disregard my friendships because of the things that they were doing, because I loved the people, I didn't like the actions. So I still wanted to be around people, still wanted to be with them. Then all of a sudden I realized I'm so much weaker than I thought I was. So my friends came round to mine and I wasn't doing anything, they knew I wouldn't. And it wasn't like a pressured way, we were just friends that shared. So I enjoy this, I know you used to enjoy this, I don't know what's really happened, so do you want a bit of cat? And I was like, no, I'm all right, thanks. And then a couple hours go by, they're like, hey, we're doing it again. Like, do you want a bit more? Do you want some? Like, we've got some if you want. I was like, no, I'm all right. It was like 2 a.m. and they were like, oh, Reuben, like, there's a bit left if you want to finish it off. And I was like, oh, okay, go on. Because I saw what they were kind of doing. I kind of missed it. So 6 months.
And as someone that doesn't drink, it's very weird to be around people who are on any substance.
Yeah.
Right? And you're not. And I mean, I don't know what that was like for you, but my sort of reflection on, you know, I love my friends and, but I can tell you when they've had one beer, let alone 10. And by the time they get to 10, I think the whole room is the most irritating place to be. And, you know, you with love and grace and mercy, I now check out. But my friends will be like, oh, where are you going? Please stay, you know, like, and I'm like, it's really, I can't be here, you know, like, just because the language changed, the jokes changed,
atmosphere changes.
Yeah, everything changes. And I can imagine like you trying to be sober from whatever and then being in that environment. I mean, you're going to want to take something just to escape the moronity of it sometimes. It's
interesting. There's so many analogies where this would work, but it's very hard to bring someone up. You normally stoop down.
Right.
And it's kind of thing of, you can't, like the conversation, you can't bring it to a sober conversation because they're not at the capacity for those.
Right. So the depth
if you want to be
for, you can't find because they're all wasted.
Yeah. And then it was only the one point. It was great always seeing in the mornings when I was sober and I'd slept and had like 4 or 5 hours sleep, and they were wide all night so they couldn't sleep. And I go, was it worth it, boys? And they always go, nah, it's never worth it.
Yeah,
when I'm up at 8 a.m, enjoying the day in the sun, going on a walk with my girlfriend, going to do all those great things, and they're like, I need vitamins, I need smoothies, and I need to replenish everything that I've just strained out of my body. And it led me to this place where the girl that I'm dating now, we dated a while ago, and she was a Christian, she loved God. I was sober when we started dating, so like it was great for both of us. And she said to me, she was like, I don't know if I can date you, because I had to tell her this these last 2 weeks what's gone on.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can date you if you're doing drugs again. Because she said, I know.
What's
brilliant. Ella, shout
out to Ella. You keep doing that, young lady.
But she also said something that was really important. She said, but I don't want to break up with you on that reason, because if that's the reason you stop, if we ever broke up, like, you just go back to it. You need to decide for it yourself. This was the first, like...
She sounds smart.
She's brilliant. She's incredible. And this was the first, like, real emotional prayer I ever had with God. Like, this is when, like, faith became, like, really real. Remember on the bench, actually tears with her and just being like, God, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought it was. Like in my strength, 6 months, like in the grand scheme of things, like in all of those, there's people that go sober and then you see the next party and they're like, yeah, I just can't be bothered. oh, I can always quit when I want to, and then they're just next weekend putting the same things in their mouth.
Yeah, and then they're 40 and saying it.
Yeah, the drug addicts, the people with alcohol addictions on the street, they thought they were going to stop at one point. It just got a bit of a grip that they never were expecting. And then from this day now, it's in summer, in August, it's 3 years since I last touched drugs.
Wow.
In October, it's 3 years since I drank alcohol, so it's 2.5 years. My strength, I thought, was all right, 6 months. God's strength, it's 2.5 years, it's counting. And I don't want to be arrogant thinking I can always do it. There's temptations that have come, and it's as I'm talking about these things that I've had to unlearn. I'm sober and I'm at a party, or like I go in clubbing sometimes or anything like that, and I was just like, wait. It wasn't the alcohol, it was the things. Like the alcohol fueled the mindset, the things that everyone was doing. It's, hey, like, you're insecure, you don't know where you stand. So am I, and maybe we're both a bit bored. So like, let's mutually use each other, because I'll objectify you and add your worth to a number, and you'll do the same to me. And if your number maybe seems higher than what I think mine is, if I get with you, then that makes me something around that number. And this was my mindset, and this was like lots of people's mindset. You go to a club and it's like, hey.
Do you think that, like, cognitively, because that's like, seems like a really good piece of hindsight, but were you thinking that? You're thinking, oh, here's another notch on my bedpost, and the lads will love this, and I'll feel great, and, you know, whatever, or was it just like a feeling? It's just like, oh, I'm a bit lost, and oh, this feels nice? Because I was never that smart as a young man.
I think it's a bit of both.
Right.
I remember one time walking back from a party. It was like around my birthday. I think we'd done like 3-day bender, like 3 parties in a row. Then went to 2 parties in one night. Saw loads of people, friends that I hadn't seen in a while, really good friends, like everything that's good about a party that I enjoy now. But I walked home and I was just like, oh, it's an awful night. I was walking back, we did like long walks, like from like Plymstock to like Devonport, like hours. We were just chatting, and I was just like, why was that so bad? And I just like went through the night, just kind of like evaluated a little bit. It's kind of just naturally what my brain does, trying to work out the root of the problem. And I was like, the only thing that didn't happen was I didn't get with a girl. And I was just like,
right.
Wow.
So a good night out was depending on whether you'd pulled or not.
Exactly. And I realised that, and I was like, wow, that's not ideal.
I mean,
like the one factor,
right?
Yeah. Like the one factor that determines whether I have a good time or not is that. Mm. And I wish then that like that started all of the stuff. Continued for like a year.
Yeah.
Maybe I got with girls a little bit less, like I don't know, but like it didn't change the habits. Mm. Like it was a realisation that then slowly I went, oh wait, no, that's really got a hold. Like that's really got a point.
What's that?
Well, as in just like the reason that I'm doing these things, it's something that will never satisfy.
Right.
Because even when I manage to mutually use that person, it's only a fix for a temporary thing, and the next time I go out, I want to do the same thing.
It only makes that night a good night out.
Yeah.
The next night out is valueless.
But you know what's not good? Is when you're walking through and you have those awkward eye conversations, or you're in school and the reputation that you kind of gain and different things like that. And we pretend like we don't care, but when that person walks in the room, you notice them before anyone else does.
Yeah.
And then we think that it's, hey, like that doesn't matter. It's just what people do. Mm. And like, I downplayed it lots. Like I was like, hey, it doesn't have to be awkward. I said to my friends, I was just like, oh yeah, it doesn't have to be awkward. You can be fine. Like got with my mates, and that was weird. Do you know what I mean? But then you just pretend like nothing happened. But it affected something. There was something that always had whatever sort of, and by the grace of God, like I'm a virgin still. Like never slept with anyone. I slept in the same bed as girls and nothing happened. I don't know how who knows? But even...
Why do you say that? Why do you say by the grace of God that you're a virgin? I mean, it's nice to hear. And I mean, I think we should celebrate virginity, purity, whatever you want to call it. But I'm really interested to hear why you think it's a good thing.
Because I've got a girlfriend now that we don't kiss. Because the whole premise of how we date is I don't want to act married until I'm married.
Yeah.
And I think it is why I think the Bible and Christians like vote for celibacy in that sense.
So tell us about what's good about that. Because, you know, you're going to hear how that's like a challenge and difficult and all these other things, but this is a Christian podcast. So, you know, for other young people listening out there, like, they're just going to think you're nuts.
Yeah.
Right? Well, you don't kiss, you know?
Yeah. Telling my friends is quite a funny thing.
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. But tell me, like, what's the value in that? Like, why should we celebrate that as a culture? And, like, Reuben, like, why should I mirror that, you know, in my relationships?
Well, so like I said, the whole premise, I think, around these things is not acting married until you're married. I've been in a codependent relationship from both sides, hyper emotional, like following everything. Like this feels good. I've never felt like this. Like, wow. And it like blew up like so. And then like we didn't cross too many boundaries really. My boundaries now are like so far down. Like I said, I learned from the mistakes, dealt with the consequences. Like, wow, I don't want to do that again. And it was 4 months of excitement, fun, in summer, like doing all the things, spending loads of time together. And then when September hit, went back to work, she started work. We asked the question of, what do you need? What are you expecting from a relationship? And realized that what she was expecting and what I was prepared to give didn't quite line up. So it was at a point where I felt like I was giving more than I necessarily was receiving, and that's okay. You do that for a time in a relationship. But when I was doing that, she felt like she wasn't getting enough. So we dated for 4 months, which was hyper emotional, very exciting. But I always say in that relationship, I think if we'd have dated well, we'd have never dated. Because right at the start, what I did with Ella when we kind of restarted stuff was, what are you expecting? What are you needing? Where are you going? Where have you been? And what does that look like for us together? Because there's these things that are uncompromisable. And what happened is I put aside those things for the sake of the emotions. That's a distraction, a bit of a blur. The Bible says, like, don't awaken love before it's time. And this is a problem where we get taught loads of discipline and like religion. I think it's why when we talk about Gen Z, like it's the rebellion against religion is because religion and tradition tends to be wisdom passed on from generation to generation to generation. Look at a wedding. The father and mother giving them away, it's because they raised them and then they're handing over that. You may now kiss the bride. Is because generation after generation realize it's probably best if you don't kiss your wife until she's your wife.
Wow.
And then we go, no, but that's just tradition and religion. Because we get told the why, but we don't get told the biblical truth behind it.
Yeah, we get told what to do, but that's why I'm saying is like, what is the value in that? And, you know, what are you hoping the end point is? I guess it's marriage. And
yeah,
when the vicar says you may kiss your bride, like you are so excited and ecstatic to do that because you're, I guess, sealing a covenant relationship.
Yeah. It's, right now, Ella and I, we're preparing to get married.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Asked her.
No.
Come on, Reuben. I hope she doesn't watch this. I hope she doesn't watch this, but Reuben, me and you can have a chat, right? It involves a rock. Right? Of a certain size.
Of a certain size and a certain carrot.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. But you've got to ask her, man.
Yeah, and...
Are you serious about all this?
And this is what we're doing. We're preparing to get married, and if the answer's yes, we'll get married.
Right.
If the answer's no, we'll break up.
Yeah.
If the answer's probably not, we'll work out quite quickly if that's the answer. If the answer's probably yes is where it's at, we're going to continue where we're at, and intentionally. Like I said, I've done the hyper emotional, I've done the codependent, I've done the acting married before you're married, and all of a sudden we realise why a relationship hurts so hard. It's because so many people have gone through what almost is a divorce.
Yeah, because you're creating soul ties and building physical and emotional relationships with people.
And it's this thing of how do you steward that? And I've probably got it wrong. I've got it wrong definitely in the past.
Hey, Reuben, we all have 1,000 times.
But for whoever my future wife is, and like I'd love that to be Ella, but until, like I said, until that promise is there, I want to steward her heart and my heart. Because I've got to attach, and there's a girl out there in particular that I will always have a certain attachment to because of poor boundaries, because we got too attached without the commitment. I'd say like a bank or like a business deal. Like if I'm gonna invest like thousands of pounds into this business deal, like that costs me a lot. That's worth a lot to me.
Yeah.
So I want to see how you spend your money.
Well, money's a great metaphor for love and spirituality. I mean, it's why God says, isn't it? You know, where your money is, there your heart is. You want to see what someone cares about, go look at their bank transactions.
Yeah.
And you'll see.
Yeah.
Like, how much money are you giving to the church? How much money are you spending on drugs, Reuben? You know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you measure them up, it's like, wow, yeah.
And if I'm going to give you that money, like this thing that's valuable and important to me, I'm going to want a contract.
Yeah.
Because if you run away with that money without kind of like that contract that's like binding us, and it's not the paper contract that I'm talking about when I talk about like a relationship.
Covenant relationship.
Yeah, that promise and that commitment, you could leave with something that will cost me a lot.
Mm-hmm. Are we using money as a metaphor, people, by the way? Reuben doesn't strike me as someone that really cares about money that much, I'll be honest.
Not really.
Right. Gen Z.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever comes. But yeah, so that's the kind of interesting parts of, as I talked about before, like
so
working out the problems.
How Jesus stepped in and, you know, like you said, you 6 months, Jesus the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Talk about the Jesus part.
The Jesus part, well, it's been the best decision I ever made. One of my friends used to say, he said, I was in the world enough to, I can't remember the thing, but basically talking about like, when you're in the world but of faith, you don't enjoy the world. But when you're of faith and in the world, you can't fully enjoy faith. And it was that step for me. It was like, okay, God, if you're taking everything, now there's everything. Like you made the joke about money that's like, hey, anything I own, God, if you say give it up, I'll give it up. And it's been the best decision I've made. I've just, every 6 months, I've been on this trajectory of just like deeper and deeper into my faith, more of the person Jesus wants me to be. That I just said, hey, God, if this is real, like prove it. Like if you're the guy that created me, that you see my future even before I was even born, and you know the life that's ahead of me, like God, if you're good, not only if you're good to me, prove it. So what you need from me is my yes. I have my yes. And I feel the most fulfilled, this relationship, I feel the most fulfilled. It feels like, it feels safe in my life, in the decisions, like the things that are fleeting, the things that have those long-term consequences. I've avoided a lot of them by being like, by not drinking, by not taking drugs anymore, by pursuing Jesus in all of those things, taking him at his word. The last years I've been undoing and rebuilding those foundations rather than building new ones that just won't last.
So building your house on the rock.
It is.
The rock of Jesus, come on. So Reuben, like, it's so interesting. I could stay there forever. I mean, we've done sort of half an hour just on your testimony, and it's just really nice to explore some of like what you think and what you feel. And, you know, I think about this next generation. One of my concerns is like, you know, we've said Gen Z. I had to ask what Gen Z was before we started because, you know, you're just a young man to me, you know. I don't identify probably in the same way as young people do with different generations. And I think it's social media that's driven that, you know, like the jokes between what is a Gen Z, what is a millennial, what is a boomer. And, you know, they do them skits and stuff on social media. But like, I've never really identified with being a millennial, for example, you know, but I know what we mean by them terms. So I'm going to use the term just because we are. Yeah. Having asked what it is before we start, ladies and gentlemen. But you know, like what does faith look like for, you know, Gen Z? I hear you talk with a lot more fluidity and less rigidity about your faith, and I almost, honestly, I can feel the audience bristling at you saying, "Oh, I said to God, prove it," right? Because you know, you're like, well, he's told not to test God, right? So like, and yet, what I feel in my spirit and what I hear God saying to me is like, look at this passionate young man who has a heart for me, knows he isn't getting it all right, but you know, he's on that journey to inquire into what my heart is about, who wants to find me in his journey, who's putting all of his trust in me. But like, it strikes me that might be an anomaly, Reuben, but I have no idea because I don't hang around with loads of young people, and you're like a young adult leader, is that
right? So young adults pastor,
young adult
church
pastor.
Yeah.
So what does faith look like for the next generation? Like, what should we be doing to support you and your generation in finding Jesus and having discipleship that really is relevant?
I think someone asked me the other day, we were doing some street work, and they said, "What do you do?" It's quite an interesting question for a pastor. Like, what do you do? And it's like a church plant, so I'm like, doing everything. It's kind of the question, like, what's the point of my job? And I was just like, explaining to them, they were like 14. I said, well, with the young adults, so it's particularly like 16 to 30s, like life's pretty hard. I think at whatever age, it's almost a guaranteed life's pretty hard and quite confusing. And what I believe, what I think the Bible teaches is it's these guidelines to life. The Bible just isn't just that. It's a story, a narrative of a God who's good, who cares for us. But he goes, because he cares for us like a father, he guides us. And it's saying, okay, God, like I said before, if you know the future, if you know what's like the plans that are good for me, how do I find them? And school systems, from the age of 4 or 5 to the age of 16, I've got friends that are 16, 18, 23, and plus. They're all asking the question in life of what's the point and what do I do? Where you get told, hey, go into the systems, go in and work hard so you can do this to get to the next step, and do this to get to the next step, and do this to get to the next step. And all those ages, 16, you finish year 11, and it's like, what are you going to do with your life? And they go, I don't really know. Maybe if you've got a bit of an idea, you might go to college, do an apprenticeship.
A-levels, something
but mostly it's, I don't really know, I'll do A-levels. Because it broadens your options a little bit. Then at 18, it's like, what are you going to do? Oh, I got asked that 2 years ago, but I kind of just put it to the side, and now I'm here. I'll go to uni. And you kind of like funnel down, but you're still kind of, because the degree will open doors. So it's 23. What am I going to do? I'll do a master's, or I'll do a gap year. And it's this whole thing that the systems of education, I don't think they're objectively bad, but what they teach us is like, hey, do this to get to the next step. And the qualifications that you get, that's going to determine how good your life looks for the rest of it. The financial situation your families will be in, where you live, who you are, whether you're going to be one of the old people that retire happy, or you're going to be one of the grumpy pensioners because you hated your job for the last 40 years. Because we're told and almost taught that you can't change your career, and that's not always true. But then the pressure that's added to 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 23-year-olds, or anyone in between those categories. Okay, you spent the last 15 years working towards this. What are you going to do with your life? And they just go, I don't really know. So I look around at what my friends are doing, what the world's telling me. So money's good. So I'll get some of that because that gives me the answers. So I'll spend the rest of my life chasing the money and then realize that doesn't satisfy. Or fun and emotions are good. So I'll chase money to then spend it on fun and emotions and pleasure. But as I've talked about loads, when I've chased fun, emotion and pleasure, it's normally backfired and cost me something that I wasn't really willing to pay for. And then all of a sudden, there's this Jesus guy that comes along 2,000 years ago, and the things that he's saying are still really apt right now. And why I say to people, why do I believe what I believe? It's because when I look at the Bible, and sometimes I've listened to what it said, and when I've listened to what it said, I've looked back and I've gone, hey, that was a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
And there's other times where I've known what the Bible said and I want to go this way. And then I've taken this big loop round and I've gone, oh, maybe I should have listened. And there's still things that I look in the Bible and I go, I don't really know why.
Yeah. So what's happening with your generation? Because I'm trying to preface a bit of blurb I have here, Reuben, to be honest, so I'm just going to be straightforward. Is, there's a thing that you did that sort of kicked off during the thing that we won't say that began of 19. But I was pretty encouraged to read about it and hear about it. And, it's mainly the reason we've got you here is because it helps us understand, how are Gen Z, seeking God and seeking God together.
Yeah.
In ways and on platforms, Reuben, that I don't even know exist. Do you know what I mean? Like when we're talking about it at lunch, just share with everyone at home a little bit about, what happened during the time we shot.
During the time that we shot at name. Well, so in November time, so obviously there was kind of 3 big things that changed the UK and a lot of those things. So November time, we're not able to meet in person. So I was chatting to a friend, we were on calls, trying to keep in touch during all of that time, and just said, hey, I read my Bible, but I design it to be looked back on. I do the highlights, those things, but I never really look back on it. So let's just start reading our Bibles together, highlight it and chat about it. Let's look back. So we do that and we're on different calls. We just say, hey, we're about to go off and do this Bible study. Like if you want to join, come along. It's a group of like 6 or 7 of us that kind of do this. Like most nights, we had no other thing to do. So we just did it most nights.
Who were there? How did you know the 6 people?
So friends of friends of friends in different ways. Lots of our young adults group. So it was my mate Dan that we kind of first started. Really good friend of mine, like my best mates. I was just like, hey, let's do this. And a couple of people, Owen, Flora, Hannah, a guy called Tom as well. From yeah.
Hashtag.
Yeah.
Do we use hashtags anymore?
Sometimes. Yeah, they work. And so we just started doing this. It was really great. Just 2.5 hours, really just chatting through this kind of stuff. The Bible that we're talking about. What does this mean? How does this affect our lives nowadays? Christmas comes around, get to see different people. A few people heard about what we were doing, reached out. Reuben, can we get involved? I was like, there's like 6 of us. It's like quite good. Like just 6 of us. More people means more like structure and stuff. Can't really be bothered with that.
Yeah, so you're like, these are my mates. We're doing this every night. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. And then
I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah, to be fair, that's kind of what I thought. And then Hannah in the group chat, she just goes, hey, Reuben, can I add some of my friends into the group chat? I didn't reply within like 5 minutes. So she was like,
of course, Jen.
Reuben, I've added some of my friends into the group chat because you need it instant.
Yeah.
So she adds 3 of the friends from like her church. And I was like, I can't say no to some of my friends and yes to some strangers. So I kind of just put the word out to people that have asked, said, hey, we're doing this thing. Monday night, 6 of us. This was then the Tuesday night, there was 9 of us on that call. It was pretty good. I was like, okay, they need a little bit more structure, but it works. That night I was in my bed and I felt God.
6 is no stress. Right?
Yeah, 3, not too much. And they're all friends again. You can have a good conversation. Mm-hmm. And got really challenged of like, open it up. Why are you being so selfish? What would you be doing if you were the one on the outside wanting to be on the inside? And that's not what church is about at all, really. So I opened it up, made a Snapchat group chat with some friends and just said, hey, we're doing this, add your friends. Within like a couple hours, it maxed out the Snapchat group chat. I didn't know there was a capacity for the group chat. It was 64 people.
Reuben, I didn't even know that you could have a group on Snapchat. And I've only ever ethereally heard what Snapchat is. You could check my phone. I know that it's an app that my niece uses.
Nice. Hey, that's pretty good.
It's pretty class, isn't it? That you can have church and Jesus on Snapchat.
Yeah, we need it there. So that night, I was kind of just like, okay, there's 64 people.
Which is a positive use for Snapchat.
Hey,
because I think I know what Snapchat was invented for.
It was originally invented for sending photos that were probably not with a lot of clothes on. Right. Which is kind of crazy when you think about it.
Right, because they disappear, that's the point for people listening that don't know what Snapchat. Snapchat was basically the app where you can send something and then the message disappears or whatever. So
and if anyone screenshots, you know about it.
So I think kids liked it because knowing how my sister checked my sister's phone for a while until adults clocked on what it was a place where you could have some anonymity and a lack of accountability. Yeah. So you're taking this thing that probably wasn't invented for the best reasons and that you're using it for Jesus. It's just class.
It is quite cool.
Sorry, carry on.
No, it's good. So we had about 35 people on the call that night. So 6, 9, 35 with a potential of like 64 people. We were on to like 2 a.m. So many people from literally Cornwall to Scotland, some even in Canada managed to join. Friends of friends of friends, just like rapid this out. Like how does anything go wide? Like social media, people share it. Small networks that become massive networks. People know people that know people. And we met every night for 3 hours. Wow. For 3 or 4 months until we could start seeing each other in person again. We grew really steadily. I felt God really challenged me. So instantly, like,
what did you do for 3 hours?
So the structure kind of was, so we had like 5-10 minutes of worship. So this was like Zoom worship. So everyone was muted. One person was on like a guitar or a piano and like kind of singing. Everyone would like have their mics muted, but sing along. We'd all have read the passage before. It was quite funny. We were going through Acts at the time. No. And we were reading it and going, oh wait, this looks a bit like what we're doing. Yeah, so everyone had read the passage beforehand. We'd split off into groups of 6. Each group had a group leader, not to teach, but just to facilitate. I kind of all called them before and just said, hey, just facilitate conversation, ask good questions, like control the conversation, not in a like, hey, you must speak about this, but just make sure it's flowing and not one person dominating. We'd come back after 20, 25 minutes, kind of feedback 1 or 2 points from each group just to make it a bit more cohesive, go back into different groups of 6, 20, 25 minutes, come back, feedback, and then smaller groups of 4, we'd go and pray. And I always said, hey, when Jesus says, how do you pray? He said, be persistent and knock. Keep asking. And so I just said, hey, if it's big or small, if there's the same thing every day, we're going to come behind you, we're going to pray for you, we're going to intercede and like get to God for that. If it's something new every day, hey, we're going to pray for that as well. So that was like 8 till 10. That was like the main kind of thing. We just said, hey, if you got school, college, uni, work, whatever, like honor that. Get some rest, come back well, and then you can come back tomorrow like at 100%. But for those, like I said, we went on to like 2 a.m. the first night. For those that want to stay, we stayed on for another hour and a half. I kind of handed that over to my friend to kind of lead that prayer time. We saw miracles. Self-harm scars disappear. There's one girl that had ME, chronic fatigue, and to get it diagnosed, you had to have it for like a year. So she had it, and then it was the day of her diagnosis. I chatted to her, I was just like, oh, how are you feeling, like with the diagnosis and stuff? She was like, hey, it was pretty good, like glad to have it like recognized.
Yeah.
And then so we went on the call, I went off and then came back on for the prayer in the evening. And we in that conversation talked a little about one of the youth that she was working with, said about like just declaring healing now, Jesus now. I was like, yeah, that's in the Bible, that's true. But also sometimes there's a different purpose for the things you might be going through, that God might use that story for even better purpose. And it just really stuck with me. So I messaged her and just said, hey, like, have we prayed for you yet? She's like, no. I was like, can we pray for your healing? So we were praying for like 45 minutes. Like, as a group, really felt like a shift of the spirit, like prophetic words, scriptures coming out. We were like, come on. It was like, how are you feeling? She's like, not gonna lie, kind of worse. I'm like, okay. Not what we were expecting. Had a couple more prayer requests, kind of did them, finished the call. 2 a.m. in the group chat. Full capital letters. She's like, guys, I'm healed. When normally it would be a wheelchair to get anywhere, or all her energy would be getting dressed, having a shower. She's now running up and down her street, just screaming worship songs. And then this is what we did for 3 or 4 months, 15 hours a week. And it's quite interesting because we talk about how does things grow? How do we get what you guys are going to do here with this podcast? It's social media, it's YouTube, all those kind of things. It's what I knew best. I did a lot of operations, and I really felt God challenge me right at the start. I was reading through Exodus at the time, and it was the Israelites had just fled Egypt, and they were about to pass through the Red Sea. And there's this wall of fire where the Egyptian army's right here, and the Israelite army's right, or the people were right there. And there's a wall of fire of God just protecting them, whilst he's hardening the ground to open up the Red Sea. And I felt like God was just saying, hey, this is you. Like you've got room to grow. You don't need to push it. I'll give you what you can handle. And we just saw growth. This network of over 120 people that kind of came through this Bible, probably near 300 or 400 of friends of friends of friends that are all connected through that 3 or 4 years later. And a real kind of calling of leadership, not church leadership, not like they're all going to be pastors, but people of influence in whatever sphere they're going to be, that they're going to bring that light. And in, again, like 3 to 5 years' time, we're already seeing some of it now, where they go, hey, what are you doing now? Come lead worship at my church, come preach at my church, come talk about the charity you're doing, your mission organization, whatever. Come to my church and like share with my community now. And it's not like, hey, you have status, I have status, let's work together to make a bigger kind of status. But it's, you're an old friend. I know you, we journeyed together for 3 or 4 months, 15 hours a week, praying and reading our Bibles. I know you, friend. Now come. And that network that's not about status, that before anyone's name is anyone, we were family that journeyed through hardship and joyous times and equipped and encouraged, all in the time where no one can meet anyone. Where everyone was so isolated. I've met some of my closest friends through all of that.
And what encourages me is there's church happening that it's not a metric that you can measure. You know, that was not going to turn up on any census or on any church news document. You know, no one's saying, you know, we're at least in England, you know, closing churches and the formal church is maybe shrinking, but actually what I'm hearing is there's a whole generation of Jesus lovers and Christians that are just doing church but just doing it differently. You know, so what next, Reuben?
What next for the generation, or
no, for you? I mean, I would never ask you to speak on behalf of a generation. I mean, you could try if you want.
Maybe.
It'd be pretty prophetic, wouldn't it?
There's a few things, but like for me personally, so being a part of this church planting team, which is really exciting. All throughout this was doing an internship at Rediscover Church in Exeter. Stayed on a second year, did this thing called the Church Planting Academy. Then from there, got asked to be part of a team to now plant this church in Newton Abbot, which is just a small little town between Exeter and Plymouth. Kind of 20 minutes down from Exeter. So I'm the young adults pastor there. As I said before, like I used to love parties. I always knew what was going on and what was happening, and like people would be up for doing whatever. So it's in this generation where we're all kind of a bit hopeless, a bit looking for direction. I wouldn't want to say we're hopeless in a way of like this, just disregard it. But we don't know where to look or where to find, so we just poke around and blindly stumble. Just bringing a bit of clarity of, hey, on a Saturday night, what do Christian young adults do? They sit at home, probably quite bored, trying to tell their friends that it's not boring being a Christian. Maybe sometimes they go to their friend's house, like it's great when they can do that, great to gather in homes. But most probably flirting with sin. Drugs, alcohol, like you've heard it's my story, because what else is there to do? So to provide a space for people to come and gather, to not be on the offensive or the defensive, but just to gather. To be focused on Jesus, have some amazing worship nights, really focused on him, but also just to chill out. As much as Holy Spirit's present and when we're worshiping, we're doing whatever, he's here in this conversation right now. So what does it look like to get people around food, almost like what Jesus did? Big long tables where we're all Christians, so you have to talk to each other. Just eat together, just chat, hear what's going on, and just be family.
Sounds great, Reuben.
It's exciting.
Can I come?
It's
Am I
good.
too old?
No, crack on's probably all right. Probably all right.
Oh, wow. I mean, Reuben, so, you know, how would you encourage other young people, you know, to step out in their faith? Because it's like you said, you know, maybe they're on their own, or maybe they're listening today, Reuben, and they're like, well, that sounds great, but look at Reuben, he's, you know, all put together and confident, and I'm none of those things. Like, what would you say to other young Christians? How would you encourage them, you know, to step out, to gather, to reach out to friends, to have prayer groups? You know, how would you encourage them today?
I think there's three things that I've just found in my faith that has helped in whatever scenario.
Great.
And if we look at the Bible study as an example, there was three things. It was the Bible, it was prayer, and it was people. And like, wherever you go, we're privileged to be in a nation where you can get a Bible. Wherever you go, you can pray. And normally wherever you are, there's people. So I think the biggest thing for me, like how has anything I've ever done and started, we did these worship nights in Exeter where it was just a couple of my friends, and I said, hey, what should we do on a Saturday night addressing that same problem? Hey, there's a prayer room, let's just go there. And then we did it once or twice with a few of our groups. So I was like, hey, this is great. So I made a group chat with my friends and just added any Christian I knew in the kind of area and just said, hey, add your friends. We're going to go down every couple of weeks to the prayer room. If you want to come, come. This group chat of like over 100 people now in Exeter that we just go down to the prayer room. And if there's 2 of us, we'll go. If there's 30 or 40 people, like we'll go. Wherever they come from, we're just going to do it. So it's just starting with who's there. Is there one person, 2 people that you get along with quite well? Dan and I, our friendship was built on swimming and chatting about how life is. It wasn't built on studying our Bibles and stuff like that. But then when you do life on mission, all of a sudden it brings you a little bit closer. Because when it's this search for like, hey, what do I do with my life? Where do I go? And all of a sudden we look at what Jesus said, is that your purpose is to glorify me. The only reason you took a breath today is to give glory to God. It's because God's saying, I'm not done with you yet. Otherwise, why don't when we get saved, we'll just go up to heaven.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's a kingdom that we've got to bring here on earth. God's kingdom come on earth today. So this is what we've got to do. And it doesn't always look like being around your Bible all the time. It doesn't always look like being hours and hours in prayer. Those things help. But it looks like being with people. And then this is how I've kind of found it is like, okay, what do I want to do? Normally when I want to do it, there's a few others that might want to do the same thing. I normally find it a lot easier and better if we do it together. Why don't we just go for it? And then you bring that back to like the testimony I talked about right at the start. I want to have fun and follow my emotions. There's some other people that want to do that too. Drugs, parties, and alcohol is how we do that. And then all of a sudden we realize we're living in the consequences. It's the same things that draw anyone, particularly in our generation, I think, together. But there's some directions that I've found out don't always lead to great places. But then there's other directions that normally when it's following Jesus does lead to some pretty great directions, and life has been fulfilling, life has been exciting, full of adventures and trials and faith, ups and downs. But in my 20 years of life and the years that I've really been following God for the last 3, he's not really failed me. And he's been really good. And I'm still going to give it a shot. Because when I've been following that, it's been so worth it. And every time I come away, I normally end up regretting it.
100%. I mean, I think that's a great place to finish, Reuben, really. There's no summarising I need to do. I do need to do some thank yous, though. I mean, if I was to summarise, Reuben, I would just say, number one, thank you on behalf of everyone on God TV and everyone listening. It's honestly, it's a joy just to hear like how Jesus has been so good and how like stoked you are for having him in your life, and you're clearly like influencing other people as well. And I just want to encourage you, like, keep doing that, keep going after God. You know, you're inspiring older men like me as well. You know, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, you know. Like I say to everyone at home, male or female, you know, whatever, my age, older. I mean, do you still have the energy that Reuben's got? You know, do you still have that passion for Jesus? And are you still on fire to make a difference in other people's lives? Because that's the other thing, Reuben, is it's great to hear how you've got a heart for other people. And I think that is God, that is Jesus. You know, Jesus didn't come to save a theology. He didn't come to save a church. He came to save people, you know. So we say thank you. I'd also like to thank the production crew in the back, as always. Yeah, we've got Rich, Dimitri, Trev and Noah. Guys, thank you very much, because without all your work, Reuben and I couldn't look so beautiful today. He's laughing. You're definitely the beautiful one, Reuben.
Oh, thanks, mate. That's why I put the hat on.
Yeah. Well, my hat's over there, and I wish I'd left it on, really. And you know, just to say to everyone at home, like, we appreciate, you know, your time, and please do put something in the comments. I mean, you don't have to agree with everything we say, and really this is a place of discussion, a place of exploration, a place to find Jesus in different ways from different generations around different topics. However, if you are struggling with any of the things mentioned in the show today, drugs, alcohol, addiction, anxiety, depression, there are people who are prepared to take your call. They can minister to you. They can pray for you. They're not medical experts, so if you need any intervention, they will pass you on to the right people. But please, it's free. It's a great resource. So if you just want to speak to someone today, call the number. We'll put it in the comments below. And also, you know the things you're supposed to do, so like and subscribe. The more you like and subscribe, the more we can share Jesus across social media. If you don't know, like and subscribe, the algorithm doesn't get hold of it, and you know, we can't push this message further faster. So really, your participation is, just like Reuben was talking about, it is essential for us to share what God is doing in and through all of our guests' lives. So to carry on seeing interesting and challenging media here on Together the Podcast, please like, subscribe, share, and together we will see the whole world reach for the good news, with the good news of Jesus Christ. So from myself, Reuben, and all the God TV team, we say goodbye and thank you, and we'll see you again next time.